everybody. Welcome to PEMA TV.
Welcome to Friday, 4/4/14.
You know, if somebody was a numerologist, that might mean something.
It might.
That's 8, 9, 13. That's a 4. Anyway.
Back to 4/4/14.
Exactly.
See? Any way you look at it, it's 4.
And how about that chupacabra?
Yeah, it's not a dog.
You know, it's not a kangaroo either.
No, it's not.
And it's not built like a raccoon. We'll talk about that more here in a minute. But right now, if you needed to find some really, really good sage to go out and help clean yourself after an investigation, you could go to Metaluna Boutique and Stones, which is going across the ticker right now.
Nice.
You could click and go to that website and you could get, what are we looking at here?
I have no idea what that particular one is. Right now what I have available is Desert Sage, the 8-inch Desert Sage, or the 8-inch Desert Sage with lavender.
And that's at
Granny's Antique Store, MetalunaBoutiqueandStones.com.
And it's as if Friday nights for an hour isn't enough of both of us.
Yeah.
Next weekend, on Saturday, you can come and find us in the city, lovely historic city of Jefferson, Texas.
Haunted City.
We will be there at History, Haunts, and Legends, the spring edition.
That's right, because she does it every April and November.
So you can go to jeffersonghostwalk.com and get all your tickets and information. And better hurry, all the overnight investigations are selling out.
And there are 5 different locations, so that should tell you something.
Yep, it's going to be a busy day and a busy night.
It's going to be fun, though. Because Martha's going to be there, Dakota's going to be there, Diddy's going to be there, RD's going to be there.
Just for Martha.
Just for Martha. Dr. Rita Louise.
Mm-hmm.
Mitchell
Whittington.
Larry Flaxman.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy Nance.
All the cool kids.
That's right.
Well, all the cool kids except for our guest tonight, because he's in New York and he can't help that.
Hey, we went to New York for an event. That doesn't mean they can't come here.
But tonight we are joined by a new friend, Mr. Chip Reichenthal.
Yes.
Chip is an experienced radio man, but he is currently on 2 different radio networks. Or is that 3, Chip?
3.
Actually, on 3 radio networks. You do come from the old school, though, correct?
I do. I do. I mean, analog is still my friend. So yeah, I love the old school.
Well,
but he's not only radio; he's also a paranormal investigator.
He is even is or was a psychic medium, Chip.
Was is more appropriate, you know. Every once in a while, I still get something here and there, but it's a was.
Yeah, not by choice, not by anybody's choice either. So everybody knows that.
That's right. But it was a fun few years. I will say that.
Well, Chip, what? Just so our viewers here on PEMA TV, I know you had been on Paranormal Science Lab with Lisa and those guys.
Yes.
So our viewers here, our specific viewers that come to watch us on PEMA TV, since that might be the first time they've heard of you. What kind of got you started down this crooked path that we call the paranormal?
Oh wow! Well, it's a kind of a neat story. It was 1979, a long time ago. It was a week before my 21st birthday, and my best friend growing up. I met him when I was 2 years old. He lived next door to me. And we were like twins, you know, my first soulmate in life, really, from age 2 to almost 21. He had gotten into an accident, and a very bad accident, and he was brought to the hospital. He was down in Florida. I was in New York at the time, New York State, and he was brain dead, and the prognosis was extremely grim. And this was my first experience with death, you know, and he was not yet dead. I had about a week to process this whole thing. Very shocking to me. And of course, how do you grieve something that isn't gone yet? But I found a way. I went to this swing set in my parents' backyard, had a couple of quarts of beer, and was trying to process this information. And before the night was over, the swing next to me, I don't know, I can't really describe it that great, but long story short, my friend Stephen, who was supposed to be in a Florida hospital, was now on the swing next to me. And great way to process this whole thing. I had a lot of conversations in my head with regard to what I'd say to him if I saw him again. But here he was. I can't call it a hallucination, but it was something similar. But he was on the swing next to me and speaking in his voice. The conversations I had with him in my head was kind of my voice, coming from his mouth. But this was his voice, his mouth, his words. And he said that he didn't want to stick around anymore. He was banged up really badly. He was basically brain dead. They were keeping him alive artificially, respirating and all that. And he said he didn't want to live like that. He wasn't raised to be fully dependent. Not thinking for himself, not eating for himself. And he came for my blessing, basically. He said, I want out of this. I don't want to be alive anymore, and I came for your blessing. And I tried to talk him out of it. It's like, come on, Stephen, strongest survive. You hang in there, medicine will catch up. They'll do something. And he's basically saying, no, it's beyond that now. They can't fix me. There's nothing that can be done here. And, I don't want to lie there with people doing everything on my behalf. Can't do it. Eventually, he did talk me into his point of view. So I did. I gave him my blessing. I thanked him for, asking me. Told him I loved him, and, maybe he could visit from time to time if he could do that sort of thing, after. And he agreed to that, thanked me for my blessing, and then that energy on the swing disappeared. And about 5 minutes later, maybe 10 minutes, by then it's about 3 in the morning, my mother comes out of the house and all the way back to the swing set. I've known my mother all my life, and she was never up at that hour, let alone outside, coming to see me on the swing set. She said that Stephen's parents had just called, and they decided to pull the plug. So they flew all the way down from New York to Florida just so they could do that. And we were the first ones they called. Out of respect for me, they wanted me to know. And I discovered really at that moment in time that I had an audience with my best friend at the moment of his death. And again, almost 21 years old, and this is 1979. And but that started a kind of a long range for me, still going strong here in 2014. To learn about the afterlife, all the different takes on it, the religion, science, people's personal beliefs and opinions, and from that eventually paranormal investigating also. And I did have some success as a spirit medium for about 7 years, and that was the late 90s into early 2000s. And I kind of let that go. I was DJing in nightclubs of all things, very good at it, for the Albany and Saratoga, New York areas. And I actually was consulting my dance clients about their deceased relatives, And pretty soon I started noticing that when I walked into a room, people started clearing the room, and when you're in the entertainment industry, you don't want that. Yeah, so I really put all the mediumship on hold, and never really got it back, once I did that. A couple of years went by, and I ended up doing paranormal investigations again. I don't like mixing mediumship with investigations personally, only because some of the people that we've worked with Many times it was unintentional. We do a lot of public type investigations, which is really all about emphasizing history. The guy that I work with, he's got the team. His name is John Tobin. His team is called the Glory Haunt Hounds, and history was always essential to him. Good research was essential to me, so it was like a Chase Sanborn thing when we got together and do this. But when we do publics, it's basically informative and educational. But when some mediums come in, usually in a public setting, we always get the ones who volunteer themselves, not the real ones. And the ones that volunteer themselves, I think, is similar to American Idol contestants. Their mother and father told them all this time they were so good at singing, and when they start singing, they sound horrible. And we got that same kind of medium. And they'd walk past a room and say, "Oh, I got a bad feeling about this room," And in my mind, that poisons the well. Everybody comes into an investigation, especially with these public ones where we get all levels of experience and a lot of unexperienced, curious people. Mm-hmm. But their minds are poisoned once somebody says, "Oh, I got a bad feeling about this." Their slates are no longer clean. Their expectations are now geared toward the negative. Between that and what they see on television and a lot of the shows where it's not the people doing the shows as much as the producers, but there is a fear-based element in there. Yeah. They really push the fear element, kind of keep it like a horror movie type of broadcast, so it's more visceral than informative. And I don't like seeing that happens, Even when I did have some tendencies toward the mediumship in an investigative setting, I would do my best to at least keep that stuff to myself, because I don't want to be the guy that influences others to where the investigation becomes my investigation or this particular medium's investigation. I want it to be, each person in their own mind. Their perceptions are their realities. So whatever they bring to the table, is theirs. We would like to say, hey, think positive though. If something occurs and you have some sort of dialogue with somebody, perhaps, please try to think in terms of respect, keep it respectful. Think that they were people too who lived valued lives and perhaps have wisdom to share, and aren't just here to poke you and prod you and jam you up if they're here at all. They could be here for positive means.
Yeah.
So, boy, there's an answer to your question, and look at the time.
do you find that most of the ones who go in automatically volunteering up information, I'll always start off on the negative side?
Almost. Look, we had brought some mediums on purposefully. We haven't done that often. But the ones we found, and John and I are very similar in the regard that positive things are crucial to our realm, Look, this is a potentially very dark study, but it doesn't have to be, There are positive things. He lives for the history, John Tobin does. I live for the potential to communicate. And a couple of times we brought mediums on that were very good. We both screened them separately and agreed that they were good. And when they came in, they would not do that. Every once in a while, they'd come up with some things or descriptions of energy that may sound a little deeper and darker than they were meant to. But no, not like that. So the couple of times that we did bring people in, we ended up with a very, for lack of a better word, loving and positive environment. And that really enhanced everything.
Yeah, I'm also a firm believer, like you said, when somebody walks in and specifically says, well, I have a bad feeling in there, that not just their intention, but the fact that they said it, and now that intention will go through everybody in the group.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah. And there's a difference between walking in and getting a heavy feeling,
mm-hmm.
and just, walking past the door and going, oh, there's something bad in there. Yep, we got to get away from here. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I actually, we were talking about my being on the Paranormal Science Lab with Lisa Livingston Martin and John Emmett. And we were talking about that sort of thing there too. You know, I studied a lot in psychology. I have a family member who is schizophrenic. I went to college, in essence, to cure them. And a lot of what I learned there, I bring even into the paranormal realm. Because back in my days as a medium, there's this concept called as above, so below. Generally says that if people were a certain way, say stingy and grumpy, or pranksters and always joking, you know, that kind of essence transfers into their personality in the afterlife as well. So, you know, they really won't change all that much. So you look for telltale signs that reminded you of these people when they were alive, and you may receive even more affirmations afterward. But I think when you were talking about energy just now, my favorite example is, say the three of us are in a nightclub. We went to a nightclub, all right? And people are walking by that we find attractive, okay? And we are looking at them, and they back at us, maybe smiling in our regard, and there's that little positive feeling, you know, that we get from that kind of attention, you know? And a couple of minutes later, there's this couple a few stools down from us that start arguing. And we're paying a little attention to that out of the corner of our eyes, maybe more so than the attractive people that are walking by and smiling at us. But soon the argument starts turning into a fight, and now we're really paying attention to that. And the thing about that is we're paying attention to the attractive people because there's a good feeling there, you know? And human nature, for some reason, has a tendency to pay more attention to the bad stuff. There's this line Julia Roberts says to Richard Gere in the movie Pretty Woman: always easier to believe the bad stuff about you, you know, or about anybody else. And there's a point there. And this energy example helps make the point. Because now it's turning into a fight, and it's clearly becoming a fight. And now we can pay attention as all the other conversations that are going on around us in this nightclub start taming down, and more people are focusing on this couple that's arguing or fighting. And because it involves our personal security now, so it's much clearer to us, and our minds work that way too. The Heart Math Institute just released a study about 6 months ago that says that when you're, say, meditating, when your mind and your heart are both calm and positive and in this beautiful, tranquil state of mind, like a meditative or hypnotic stance, that's when we actually output the most energy from our bodies. And I always thought, you know, the most energy would come from a negative circumstance, but truly, to the universe, it's the positive stuff, and the heart will actually expend more energy out to the universe than our brains do. I always thought the brain would because it's always thinking, you know, but it's the heart. But in this instance where we're noticing this fight and everybody else is noticing this fight, you can feel the energy in the room change, and everyone can identify and believe with that because everyone now is paying attention to their personal security. And when we are in a state of danger, even in a simple argument, let's say we're in this nightclub and we start talking politics and we start having a bar argument over politics, and even though nobody's getting upset while we're yelling back and forth over, you know, different things for different sides, it still affects our brains and our minds the same way that everybody is paying attention to this couple, because our brains really, actually, literally, even in a bar argument, shut down, because all the blood now will go to our limbs so we can defend ourselves, and we no longer have the ability for abstract thought, you know, which kind of kills the whole debate, especially where politics is concerned. Because if we're angry, even in a simple argument, our brains have shut down. All the body's gone, all the blood has gone to our limbs, so we can defend ourselves. So it makes for a bad debate. That said, though, if we then leave the nightclub and we think about the difference between that positive energy, that mild positive energy we're getting from the attractive people staring back at us, and the negative energy we were getting from that couple fighting, we're going to remember that negative energy better. And it all comes down to defense. But, you know, our brains work in very peculiar ways. I used to do hypnosis, too, hypnotist, really for the purposes of hypnotherapy. And our subconscious minds are like these supercomputers. We have 5 senses. I like to think 6, you know. But we have 5 senses, and the subconscious records everything that we ever smelled, tasted, touched, felt, saw, heard. It's like this supercomputer, but it's not good with emotion. It's only logical. So it may have us do things that are self-destructive to us because it thinks it will be good for us in the long run. There's a big disconnect between our conscious and our subconscious, but our subconscious really controls almost 95% of everything we think and feel or say or do. And it's based on judgments that we've learned, belief structures that we hold up. And I mention all this because the same thing happens with paranormal investigations or even psychics and metaphysics. Everything is belief systems. Faith has a tremendous amount of how we'll handle something like a ghost. And I mean, you all have been in this business a while, both as you know, as a hobby and as a business. And you know, you see it for yourselves. I mean, just the way the people might react to ghosts. And almost everybody who is in this industry now, or at least as a hobby, has had an experience with a ghost or something similar, a spirit, some sort of interdimensional encounter, something. But almost all of them started from a place of fear. You know, I like to tell this story about Stephen, my best friend, and how, you know, he came to me at the moment of his death because it's, to me, very telling of my path. I also had an experience with my wife's father, which is another really neat story. But still, I came into it from 2 people that I loved and loved me. It was a very positive thing. So I come into the field with that, very positive and very loving. And I see a lot of people with fear, you know, and fear leads to negativity. Any emotions based on fear are negative emotions, you know, sad, angry, depressed, whatever. But if something came out of a closet and grabbed somebody's leg, they come into this industry because that scared them, and they want to know what the heck that was that scared them. And most people that come into this industry to learn about ghosts that have had some background with them, it's like more like the ghosts picked them more than they picked the ghosts, you know, and that gives them even more propensity to want to solve this thing. So I you know, it's how we feel, it's what we expect, and all these things. And with the TV feeding that on a visceral level, and producers wanting to use these shows to almost feed a fear element, then we're really more apt to, if somebody even hints about a negative thing, such as the not so good mediums we use, or anybody, and the examples that you brought up. You know, once that well is poisoned, it's just hard to clean it up. So we really try to start with the positive, make people realize that regardless of what they may have heard from their parents or their ministers or their school or whatever, you know, it may be something that is simply really neat and potentially exciting rather than scary.
Very, very true, Chip. You know, I'm sure people may or may not know this, but you did have some experience with the actual broadcast radio.
Oh, I did, yes. Yeah, back in the day. Yeah, I did. I went to radio school in 1980. It was, you know, It was kind of a way to deal with the loss of my best friend, oddly enough. But it was like a 6-month program. It was an intense, hands-on type of program. And they found jobs for us. And in radio, that's very hard to do. So I ended up with a radio station out in the Finger Lakes region of New York State, a place called Canandaigua, one of the 5 Finger Lakes. And I did AM there and did news for the FM. And they had a basement that had a production studio for video. And we had local access cable TV. So I produced the news, the sports, and 4 shows for the TV. I was on air for 3 hours on the AM, and then babysitting the news. The FM was an automated country western thing. It was just a big machine. And so I worked almost 113 hours a week. And I think I brought home about $113 a week.
Of course,
but it was a great way to start.
Yeah, yeah. And those skills, the reason I ask is, a lot of people don't understand that when it comes to producing radio at that level and producing shows, there's so much involved and so many little things that you have to pay attention to, that those skills also carry over into being a good paranormal investigator, because you're used to keeping track of 7 or 8 things at one time.
That's true. And urgent things too. And the one thing that radio at that level teaches people is Murphy's Law, and how to handle when things fall apart. Because if you're doing a good job in radio or television or whatever the medium, nobody can see the bad stuff. I think it might have been McDonald's that had a commercial once, and when you walk into a McDonald's, you don't notice the bad things because we make sure they're not there. The counters are clean. Of course, this was years and years ago.
Right.
I don't think anybody sees a McDonald's that runs like that now. But back, a long time ago when they were just starting out, they said that, and it's true. If you don't see anything wrong, then these guys know what they're doing. I've seen firsthand, even with this network, how seamlessly things continue to go well. And sometimes you just know from being an insider that something fell apart or went wrong, but and the bottom line and the end result is you don't see it. And that's the sign of a good professional, Eric. And also, to this day, I'm scared to death of what they call dead air. So we still kind of work with the dead, even in radio. Dead air is when you lose your train of thought, or your mic goes out, but there's silence.
Right.
And, on call letter radio, which means a W something something something, or K something something something, the 4-letter stations, you can't have that. I remember I had a 10-minute newscast once at the top of the hour for a network. We were actually on meeting with the network, and I had the hiccups.
Oh.
That was the scariest thing. And I found out, I ended up, there was a paper bag. I think maybe an angel sent it, but there was a paper bag in front of me. So quickly I just breathed in and out of this paper bag, and they disappeared, And maybe it was the shock of a 10-minute, newscast for network radio, or maybe it was just lucky. But if you ever get recurring hiccups or something, try breathing in and out of a little brown paper bag.
I actually did a 3-hour internet radio show in the mornings for a while. And went through an entire week on air with laryngitis.
Oh, I've done that before too. Did you end up enjoying it after a while?
Well, I think it kind of morphed into its own little Mr. Froggy skit or something, because the longer the week went, the worse it got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, by the time I got home, it was like talking to Louis Armstrong, but at least for 3 hours, for at least 3 hours in the morning, she could keep it together with some coffee and honey and everything. She could keep it together for a radio show. Mm-hmm. I
had that once back in the day too. I've had it on internet radio even recently, And people say, well, maybe you should get sick again. It made you sound even more authoritative. Because we had the news voice.
I sound like a gravelly mess, but as they say, the show must go on. And
oh, yes.
I played a little more music than normal that week, but...
Yeah. Yeah, and in AM, we had these long songs, and I think that's why, back in the day of AM, you might have heard Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin a lot, or Hotel California by the Eagles, or Let's Go Crazy by Prince, the long version.
Chip,
these are all records that you can go to the bathroom, regardless of it's what you have to do in that bathroom. Because they're like 6-minute songs.
Yep.
Well, I'd always heard from DJs that if you ever hear Anagata Davida and Freebird played back to back,
right?
That either dinner just got delivered, or the fresh pot of coffee started brewing,
right?
And if they played Stranglehold after that, somebody was getting busy in the DJ booth, and that was what was going on.
Either that or Chip called up and requested Stranglehold, and I kind of like that one.
Well, people don't understand, with those 3 songs together, that's almost 25 minutes of music right there.
Oh, sure. But and even still, you, the positive, I would think that maybe they had a bad burrito the day before, and they had to play those songs just so I could get the toxins out of their system.
There you go.
That could happen, too.
In a healthy, cleansing way.
You're right, exactly.
Not for the next
Or they had all those
person,
biotics.
okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't go in that bathroom from 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Chip, on your shows now, and please advertise. You're on the A1B network, correct?
Yes, correct.
And you are also on Dark Matter Radio?
Yes. One of the shows is picked up by Dark Matter Radio, and that's Art Bell's baby, although he's not currently on. It's kind of a legal issue that he is keeping clean hands with. That keeps him off for now. But they're actually building up the network. They're finding some of the better shows and picking them up for the network. So when he comes back, they'll have established listenerships. So that's good. The one show that's on there now and the A1B is called Keeping the Spirits Alive. The John Tobin, who I mentioned, running the Glory Haunt Hounds Paranormal team, is the host of that show. I'm co-hosting. And then I have my own show called Beyond the Norm. Where Keeping the Spirits Alive is really, it's strictly paranormal. It really, every once in a while, maybe we'll have a UFO episode or a cryptozoology. Beyond the Norm is more my never-ending curiosity for things still paranormal, but also metaphysics, science, the universe, conspiracy theories, things that some cryptozoology and ufology, but I've seen on YouTube the same place you can see re-airings of this program that's airing right now. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube that it's not mainstream, and some of the theories in physics or science or cryptozoology, paranormal, or whatever, are a little bit out of left field, and still there's something to them, and you can find stuff like that on YouTube. So I wanted to kind of bring it more into a radio setting, and I've been proud of some of the guests we had. Had Dr. William Tiller. He's a theoretical physicist, one of the more progressive guys, but recognized by conventional physics, which is saying a lot. He's done studies on intention. Our intentions can actually move matter or change the structures of matter, and he's actually proven that. I think we were talking about this the other day. They're doing studies like that in Japan. Here in the States, Dr. Tiller has people focusing their intent on water, and they actually change the alkaloid base in water just by intending to do so, in a laboratory setting that can be proven over and over again. He's taken that concept, since he's basically, he was really the first guy to prove it, and taking it a step further now, working with autistic children and families of autistic children, where they're trying to improve the social workings of an autistic child and the communication that may be gapping between he and the rest of the world, or they and the rest of the world, or they and their parents, and using these intention studies to actually improve autism in children and the families, kind of helping to fix the whole thing, which is really cool. Had Lloyd Auerbach on. He's been on this network as well. He was I always looked up to him because he was ghost hunting back when it was really, really uncool. I mean, nobody could talk about it in public without being looked at funny or ostracized from their social group, back in those days. And he was coming up with this equipment he'd make himself and build in MacGyver-like circumstances. And,
I've always wanted to try his chocolate.
Yeah, the ghost chocolates.
I've always wanted to try his chocolate because if he's as passionate about the paranormal and parapsychology as he is about that chocolate's got to be something amazing.
Oh, my wife and I have had them. We've ordered them 5 times. I will tell you something because from personal experience. And I went to culinary school for a couple of years. I ended up getting in this accident. I messed my body up a little bit, so I couldn't work in restaurants, but I came close. It qualified me at least to recognize how good the chocolates were. These are gourmet chocolates. There's dark chocolates. He does some milk chocolate, but it's rare. He uses a lot of cacao and cocoa and, the darker chocolate. Mixes them with certain spices. He's got Siamese cinnamon. He's got blueberry espresso. I mean, just pumpkin flavor. and in time for Halloween, but year round, I mean, they're so good. He's got about 18 different flavors for these dark chocolates, and they're magnificent. And they got little ghosts on them, which are consolidated sugar. These little tiny ghosts. The chocolate is round and it's kind of flat, and you got all these little ghosts on them. But I will say that best chocolates I've ever had, ever. And my wife and I, we like chocolate, so it really is saying a lot. They're not all that expensive at all, considering, compared to retail chocolates that you can get in one of those discount stores, they're less than that overall. And hauntedbychocolate.com, that's where the website is for Lloyd's chocolates. Recommend them.
And we can tell that your wife has you trained well because you had that by memory. I must congratulate you, sir. And that's something else that maybe we need to talk about, that a lot of the quote unquote new ghost hunters, they don't. You mentioned Lloyd Auerbach, or you mentioned
John Tenney,
or you even mentioned some of the Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they'll look at you. They'll look at you. Oh, you mean the people that The Conjuring was about? But what a lot of people don't understand, because a lot of people that in the last couple of years that have gotten into this field are strictly tourists.
Yes.
They're not going to do the work. They're not going to do the good research.
They're not going to do the history.
They want to go get scared, and that's okay. But
and beyond that, they have apps now, and look, I'm a positive guy. Okay, I like to think of myself as Mr. Positive, but when it comes to those apps, I simply cannot do that, because then talk about not doing the work in the first place. This prevents it even further. We had a medium, quote unquote. This was not one of the good ones, but we had a medium who came with us on an investigation. Just happened to be in the crowd, and used one of the apps. It was called a ghost locator or something like that.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, and why would a medium need one of those in the first place? But oh my God! And it turns out we talked to one of the guys whose friend actually built one of them.
Right.
So I'm not going to mention it by name because I certainly don't want to dog it. And it could be one of 4 apps that are lumped into my anger when I discuss these things. But one of the apps actually takes the microphone on your phone and turns it on so it can listen to what you say. It feeds it into this small computer that recognizes the words you're using most commonly when you speak as it listens to you, and uses those to make up a phrase that a ghost may say if he's nearby.
That would match the conversation you were having.
That would match the conversation. So people are absolutely fooled by that. You know, hey, we're in a cemetery now. If anybody can talk, let us know. And then they'll say,
third tombstone.
Yeah, urn, tombstone.
Yeah, and see, we've actually talked with the guy that developed the ghost, and I'll call it out because I just don't care. But
okay,
he actually developed the Ghost Radar app.
Oh,
and the Ghost Radar, he said it is totally random.
Yes,
it's for entertainment. He said he thought the kids would love it, but he said he never thought anybody would take it serious. And Kim and I have actually seen people on investigations go, well, here, I can find out where they are for you. And, and it's like, well, first of all, turn off your damn cell phone, because Bob's K2 is going to go off if you don't do. Yeah.
Yes, we have worked with that one too. Actually not on purpose, but yeah, people had that when they were using on one of the investigations, and from that day forward, we made it a rule nobody can bring cell phones on investigations because of that. You know, and I heard this the same reasoning behind it, and I also hear, and I will say this: the guy who developed the Ghost Radar app is a good dude. I've heard that. I believe that. Haven't met him, but I have a friend who knows him, whose opinion I trust. So I hear the guy's a great guy, and look, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
But you know what? We have nothing against him personally, because he has never said, oh, well, this absolutely works. He has said, this is a toy. This is something to keep the kids entertained. And I'm sorry, you're 42 years old and haven't grown up enough to figure out it doesn't work.
And he truly did not expect it to be used, especially, you know, on the cusp of professional situations. I think it surprised him as much as it surprised any of us from what I hear. So
well,
I'll at least give him.
I'll
give him a pat on the back for that, but not the app.
I asked him. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They shouldn't have a cell phone on anyway, because it tends to mess with other equipment.
It does. It messes with the energies in the room. If there's some electromagnetic anomaly where there's just a lot in that area, it'll mess with that too.
Well, even if you're just doing an EVP sessions, they've got so many different downloads for these things.
I know.
Unless you're sitting there tagging it the whole time, every time your phone rings, you're going to hear some weird voice and, oh, well, we got the perfect ghost here. No, you got Taylor Swift singing. Shut up.
No, it'll be us saying, oh, ambient noise. That's one of the one of the downfalls of doing a public investigation that is, educational and informative, and lectures and parties and the whole nine. Is lots of ambient noise, and you go into these places with large groups of people, and very rarely do you get anything because there are just too many people there. But it's still fun trying. It's just every other word on the recorder as you're making a recording is ambient noise. Oh, that noise was from so and so. Or footsteps are from living people.
Don't even go there. That is the worst one ever in the entire world.
Yeah, Kim was with a group of females doing an investigation, and one lady, come to find out, she was gluten intolerant, but she decided she was going to go to the Chinese buffet with us and eat.
Oh.
So about 3 hours later, besides her stomach grumbling, she happens to stand up, and they're sitting in a circle in a hallway doing an EVP session.
3 of us were on one side of the hall, 2 were on the other. She happened to be sitting in the middle of the 3 of us on one side. She stands up, faces me, leaving the poor person behind her eye level with her derriere, and ripped one.
Needless.
And said, oh, stomach. The person across the hallway politely screamed out, It's not your stomach, it's your ass. Call it what it is. And we all fell out. It took another 20 minutes to even get composed after that.
Needless to say, it's saved in the file as OSPH trumpet. But
well, that's a good term for it.
But that's something people need to understand, that a lot of groups don't even have protocols, that you don't hear them tagging anything. You don't hear them saying, well, that's a car outside, or
that's
Bob's
the
shoe
dog
or whatever. So and then they post this stuff. Perfect example is Kim got. I find this totally hilarious, and this happened this week. Kim actually was asked or commented on a video. You can plainly see that it's a bug. I mean, they're filming from an iPhone about 8 foot away from about a 65-inch television set that's on, and they were surprised that when a moth flew from off of a piece of furniture, they were shocked that it looked like this huge white piece of light flying away when you can actually see the wings. Okay.
Well, for starters, I was told that I was just jealous because I have never captured paranormal TV quality video. And then the next person told me that they pray they never meet me because of the negativity that surrounds me at all times.
Wow. I still.
And then when one of their friends, someone I didn't know, said, I agree with Kim, it does look like a bug, all of a sudden he wants to be my friend and invited me to come do an investigation. No.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what
I've seen it a couple of times on one of the shows. I think it was My Ghost Story, caught on tape. And look, they've got some good episodes, I will say that. But I swear that one of the things that they caught that they said was something, in this allegedly really nasty place. It was an insect of some kind, and you see it. It's almost as frustrating as some of the EVPs where there's a whisper of something, and the person will insist that it says something that it doesn't even sound close to,
Right.
And I know we've all had come across people who've done that, And
Exactly.
I dismiss it as cute because what can you do,
Well, you'll hear. Oh, did you hear? He just said the Gettysburg Address. Really?
They hear what they want to hear. Right.
4 syllables, and you got the whole Gettysburg Address out of this? What?
Here comes a Yeti public service announcement number 759. If you're going to put your EVPs out, put 4 seconds before the event and 4 seconds after the event.
And don't get upset if someone does not thoroughly agree with what you are claiming.
Yeah.
A lot of thin-skinned people out there, I've noticed.
If you're going to put it out there, be ready for good opinions and bad opinions.
And right out flaming and trolling.
Yep. But I'm just going to keep hope alive because I would love to see Paranormal Unity. I mean, people say it's a pipe dream, but I will keep that pipe dream alive.
Paranormal Unity does exist in smaller crowds, and I'm not talking 5-6 people. It can be 40 or 50 people.
Yeah.
But when you get, there's this fine line where you walk, and this side has the orb people, and this has the researchers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So anybody who walks on, it's absolutely an orb, that line is where the unity stops.
It's a tough line, and I have a friend of mine who is doing a documentary on it's a cemetery near a church in his community. He's such a sweet guy, he loves his church, he loves his community, and he loves people. He's just a really, really good guy. And a lot of the activity in this documentary is orb-oriented. So it's kind of like that the commercials that are against drug use, where they have the girl walking into a train or whatever, and do you want to stop your friend from walking into this train? How do you do when they're working on their way down and blah, blah, blah. And I feel a little bit protective of this guy because there are some people who are so anti-orb that they'll eat this poor guy alive, But I have to say, and look, we were talking once about ectoplasm. Somebody brought it up, 25 years ago, scientists and ghost hunters were using terms like ectoplasm. You know, should that be silly now because of that? And I was the first one to say no, because if it was good enough to be used by the professionals at that time, there had to be something to it. And these guys were doing work. They were reading books. There was no computers. You know, they were doing hard work, sitting in places for days and hours. You know, back in the early days, I was one of the first ones in New York State, actually, to get my certificate from the Ghost Hunters, what was it, Academy or something. This was like more than a decade before the show came out. So, I mean, there was something to it. And back in that day, you never charged because it's all about the science. We were trying to discover the science. There was something elegant about it, you know. It rang of authority, passion, you know. These guys were out to prove something, but not to make money, not to corrupt the art of the science, not to be looked at like a bunch of freaks, even though we were being looked like that anyway, you know. And that's what it's all about. And there's still arguments about that today. If you know teams who are out charging for certain things, and I know teams that charge for certain things, and some of them are right to do so, you know. We've charged for events before, but all the money goes to the location. The location who is taking a risk by putting it out there that they are based on something that could be haunted, you know.
To a point. I mean,
yeah.
some of the locations we've been to, you know, are reasonable. You know the money's going back into the place. And some places are charging ridiculous prices because they had a 15-minute shot on a TV show, and you must bring in 900 people at $400 a pop for 12 minutes.
Yeah, Kim, you're absolutely right. I mean, look, and I've seen that too. But when I speak of the locations I speak of, well, let me put it to you this way: because our communities are pretty tight knit. I mean, whether we have paranormal unity or not, you know, it's kind of like a code. 15 years ago, we were all outsiders, you know, and now it's a cool thing. So we've all got some integrity and humility because of that. And it's like good people know who good people are,
right.
You know. So the good ones find each other and they stick together. At the same time, it's pretty easy in this industry, even if you're tame about it, to find people who are fame-oriented and want the attention. And it's not about the craft. It's not about the science. It's about getting themselves on TV. Yeah, and we can spot people like that. Locations that you just mentioned like that. I mean, we've got a couple here too. I mean, everybody's got them, you know. But you can kind of tell. Even if it's a pretty good place that has a pretty good reputation, once they're charging for every single little thing in exorbitant amounts, just so you might be lucky enough to make it in by selling your firstborn male child.
Right.
So you can see it for 15 minutes. You know, I mean, we're not fooled that easily, and that's one of the nice things too, is in having such a good community of good people. The good people know the bad things, but they also know the good people too.
Well, anybody gets up to New York, one of the good places, the Shanley Hotel.
Oh yes.
Love Sal. Yeah. We had our Paracon there. We love that place. I've been there 4 times.
Yeah, we also had some very interesting results with David Roundtree and some of his experiments. It was actually the first field test for his quadrilator. It was the first field test, and there was amazing data collected. But you know, that getting back to orbs, you know, David Roundtree, who is a very well-respected member of the scientific community,
he is,
and is also an author and a paranormal researcher.
And a goofball.
He's also a total goofball and a shaman and a couple other things. But and I think he knows some disco dances, but I can't prove
he
that.
He does.
That's a guy who worked nightclubs, so we get along fine.
But I wanted to point out too, David said that there are orbs. There are cold plasma orbs. And they are, he said it looked like a huge version of the Ghostbusters gun that sprayed the slime. He said that's what it looked like. But basically what it was is they were able to collect air, pull air through an electrical grid and he said they actually had a couple of orbs short out enough to blow the mesh apart. So he said they are there, but he said they are so very rare. So, you know, everything that you see on Facebook, it's not all going to be real.
Yeah, but it's not all going to be crap either. And
Right. Well,
I like that David says, you know, I mean, he finds good ways to say that. I got to meet him sometime
Yeah.
soon. You
Well,
know,
it's kind of like,
I have very high regard for him.
you know, it's the stuff I've seen. I've had very few pictures that I've seen or been sent to, because that's something else about the longevity that Kim and I have had, not only with PEMA TV but with the network, is people start sending you stuff. And I've had a few pictures that have been sent to me, and I have the program that I use to do picture review with has a negative function, because there is no true negative with a digital camera. This is just an algorithm that flips, you know, light to dark and dark to light.
Mhm.
But there's several pictures that I have been sent that I put in this program, and you can ask Kim, you look at it normally and it's like, wow, I can actually see that. You flip that negative to that negative, and it's not. It's a vase behind a window. It's something behind. It's something else. But people don't want to see that. They want to look at everything that one time, and okay, that's it.
Oh, sure.
You know.
Well, you know, some people don't. It's the work. It's doing the work. You know, debunking is a lot of work, and debunking is also. I mean, you even have to look at the person debunking in the mirror and say, okay, well, maybe, you know, this guy is apt to look at this, you know, without you got to debunk everything, you know, including yourself. It's a tough thing. I've seen some mists, and I've seen a couple of orbs that were described as plasma, which would be, you know, pretty hard to even conceive, but they're out there. And I have seen some things that are orb-looking that are simply unexplainable and would have to be at least lumped in to something paranormal.
I agree, but as far as I'm concerned, about 98% of it can be debunked. It's moisture, bugs, dust, what have you, snowflakes.
Yeah, glare.
There is that 2%, that 2% that you have to question. The rest of it, no.
Yeah, I would agree.
Well, keeps us on our toes, you know. And I'm a big proponent of doing the work. The research at these things, you know. I mean, the people that take the time to go to the town hall, look up the property, the history of the property, go to the library where they still have microfilm and microfiche. You go through those things and see, you know, stories, news stories of anything that may have occurred on the property. So you got a kind of a clear idea of who may have lived and died on or near that property.
But you have to be careful of the towns you're in.
Oh, yeah.
Cynthia and I, Cynthia's in the chat room, were investigating a 1886 murder that we came across. Mm-hmm. And when we went to the Hall of Records, the lady was not very happy to see us, gave us very little information, would not direct us to the proper materials, and as we were leaving, looked us both square in the face and said, when y'all are ready to research your own families, come on back.
Oh, wow.
I'm not from that state. I'm not looking for my family. I'm looking for this.
Yeah.
But I had the permission of the victim's great-granddaughter to search for this stuff. Mm-hmm. I made sure of that before we went digging too deep.
Yeah, and that's a lot of help. And there's always a county historian or somebody that were even better, an ex-county historian.
I'm sorry, I giggled because Cynthia typed she didn't like my accent. We were in Tennessee, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I get that. Yeah, I said I went to college in the University of Miami, and we had an awful lot of beautiful Southern girls. You know, they would come up to me at parties and say, "Oh, y'all are from New York?" It's like, no, we're from New York. We're upstate. We have mailboxes, trees, country western music, everything.
Well, I'm from St. Louis, but once I say dog, it throws them.
Yeah. Well, we had a guest last night on Keeping the Spirits Alive, Aaron Sagers, who's on, he's got a show called Paranormal Paparazzi on the Travel Channel, and he does a lot of paranormal pop culture, and he was stuck in St. Louis last night, in the middle of what could have been a tornado there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, his flight was grounded. His driver took him to this hotel bar, basically to hide.
Yep.
They were grounded, and you could hear it in the background, in the background.
Oh,
So St. Louis represented last night on our show.
Hey, we were actually in the middle of a show one Friday night when a couple of years ago the tornado hit Lambert Airport, and we lived 13 minutes from the front door. So needless to say, 30 minutes into the show, all of a sudden we disappeared and nobody could find us till the next day.
But like all good paranormal investigators, we had flashlights within arm's reach, and if you stop an SB7 from scanning, it makes a great emergency radio. Remember that.
That is true.
But anyway, before we lose time completely, I have to ask, Chupacabra or not?
Oh boy, that's a good question.
I
Look at that thing and, I want to believe it's a chupacabra, but there has to be an explanation.
Well,
there just has to.
The animal expert, the video I just watched, said it's absolutely canine. First of all, they found it in a tree.
Yeah.
And it crouches down on its back legs and eats with its hands, its front paws.
Right.
So dogs don't do either. I don't know many dogs that climb trees and sit up there and eat and use their front paws to eat like a raccoon would.
Yeah.
But it's not a raccoon.
But it's not a raccoon.
Well, something in this to me says Jungle Book. Let's say a human being was born and raised by wolves, abandoned in a field somewhere in the woods, and maybe it's an albino or has some sort of genetic.
It said mange.
Well, he said it was a dog with mange.
And that's why it lost its hair.
But that
well,
still doesn't...
that makes sense, but it wasn't really dog-looking, mange or no mange, and it did a lot of things that, like you said, a canine wouldn't do. But it could be some sort of crossbreed, some sort of genetic mutation of something, or something with a diseased, like you said.
Or a baby chupacabra, because whatever noise that was, it was making a really weird noise.
Well, it was making a possum-like noise, but I mean, if it's a breed that has never been, or a creature that's never been actually documented before, I mean, it could be. You can't say that it's not. I mean, you'd have to see the DNA.
I'm not saying it's a chupacabra. I'm saying it's not a dog.
Right. Well, I think I've got the joyful answer here.
Uh-oh.
We'll call it, let's say it's Bigfoot's mutant evil twin.
It's Bigfoot's baby cousin Fuzzy.
Okay. That's the cute and joyful answer. Yeah.
That's right.
Wow. And on that note, Chip, time has got away from us. We will be having you back. Tell everybody where they can find you and what days your shows are on.
It's both on Thursdays at the moment. Thursdays at 7 p.m. My show, Beyond the Norm with Chip Reichenthal, is on A1B, which is at mya1b.com. That's letter A, number 1, letter B, mya1b.com. And also can be found on the DTM Wicked radio network. That's coming to Fridays. Keeping the Spirits Alive is at 9 o'clock on Thursday nights on A1B. And also Dark Matter, the Art Bell Dark Matter radio network, which is darkmatterradio.net. And also classic episodes run Wednesday nights of Keeping the Spirits Alive on DTM Wicked. It's actually dtmwickedradio.com. So you can find all of those, or find me on Facebook if you could ever spell my name. Chip Reichenthal. It's R-E-I-C-H, like the Third Reich, E-N-T-H-A-L. I'm there on Facebook and also Twitter under Victims of Retail, which is my old band name.
Ooh, I've got someone new to stalk now.
Live in fear.
Sounds
Live in
good.
fear. Once again, Chip, thank you for joining us tonight. Stick around for a minute. I got a question for you. But
Sure will.
everybody, if you're going out this weekend, be sure and be careful. Protect yourself. Don't go in places you don't have permission to go in.
That's right.
And if you were anywhere near Texas, Louisiana, or Arkansas next weekend, Jefferson, Texas,
History, haunts, and
the
legends.
Jefferson Civic Center, History, Haunts, and Legends. be there or be square. It is from 9:30 a.m. to 11:45 p.m. 5 different locations to investigate.
Yeah, they're even talking about that up here in New York, so that'll be
Jefferson.
something. Jefferson, Texas. like Kim said.
JeffersonGhostWalk.com. Go get your tickets.
And with that, say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night,
Good night,
everyone.
Gracie.